The Automatic, a domestic android.
Can I be of assistance?
Programmed to protect humanity, has exceeded its command.
Is there a problem? Perhaps I can help.
All to defend one woman.
We are talking about the Terminator-inspired B-movie Automatic. This one is directed by John Molusky and stars Olivier Gruner, a one-time French foreign legionnaire. You've also got Daphne Ashbrook, John Glover, bad guy for hire, Jeff Kober in here. So a few kind of recognisable B-movie actors in this kind of science fiction action flick. Now, Olivier Gruner, I would say, you know, he's had a relatively low-key affair, never really kind of breaking through into the kind of the mainstream in any particular way. I would argue that he's most well known for the kind of the Cyborg film Nemesis, and that's obviously kind of spun off into a series of films, although he was only ever in the first one. And that, you know, that is actually quite a fun film. And Olivier Gruner has done, you know, quite a few fun films, and he still continues to make kind of more modern action films. But in the height of the kind of like the kind of the early 90s, these kind of movies, these kind of straight to action video actioners are all the kind of the rage. And you know, we had a few kind of video stars, and Olivier Gruner was certainly one of them, and one that I enjoyed watching. So the movie Automatic is one I feel gets overlooked a little bit, and no one really kind of talked about it. And it's actually one that I really enjoyed, and was actually one of my favourite Olivier Gruner films when back in the day. Having just kind of obviously not long ago kind of went to rewatch it, ordered the DVD, etc. And let's talk about it. So what is the plot here of Automatic? Well, like I said, it's kind of a riff on the kind of the Terminator style kind of movies. So what we have a corporation at some point in the future that has made kind of cyborg home protectors. So they basically have made these essentially cyborgs, androids. It's never really going to explain what exactly they are, but there you go. And they're there essentially for home protection for the kind of the rich, and they can do all sorts of things. And they have like a little advert at the beginning of the movie showing him kicking some ass of some intruders and things like this. And this company's kind of, they're just about to have some big press meeting where they're going to want to unveil a new product, and the bank's breathing down their neck. And we have this kind of like our top guy played by John Glover, and he's kind of the CEO of this company. But one of the kind of the other directors here, one evening after a meeting, gets a bit rapey with Daphne Ashbrook's character, who was kind of like a kind of secretary. And Olivier Gruner plays actually multiple parts here. There's multiple different kind of cyborgs, so to speak, but we follow one particular one. And he kind of walks in on this guy trying to rape Daphne Ashbrook's character, and although he's kind of he has this kind of program to obviously defend people, he actually has a bit like kind of, you know, RoboCop, where he has the directors and stuff. He can't necessarily kind of go against people who work for the company, but he kind of defies his programming and defends Daphne Ashbrook's character, and unwittingly kills this guy in the process. And kind of, because now he's kind of gone against his programming, he ends up creating like almost like a virus, and becomes a little bit more kind of self-aware and kind of like sentient ultimately, and wants to defend Daphne Ashbrook. And the company want to silence them and kind of sweep it under the rug because they don't want the bad publicity. So they hire a team of mercenaries led by Jeff Kober's character to try and kind of like, you know, get rid of them and kind of like make it all kind of go away, and thus becomes kind of like Die Hard with cyborgs, basically. So what do we think about Automatic? Like I've said, a kind of forgotten gem, I would say, overshadowed by more flashy productions than this one. Because this one, although it does have science fiction themes, there's not a lot in regards to kind of special effects and such. But one thing I really enjoyed with this movie was the chemistry between Olivier Gruner's character and Daphne Ashbrook's character. Because, I mean, Olivier Gruner doesn't have loads of lines, but it works in the favour of this movie because he is meant to be a cyborg with little intelligence, ultimately, and kind of really running on programming, but he's kind of developing as he goes along. There's kind of a lot of comparisons to the Tin Man from the Wizard of Oz, for example. So I just kind of like this kind of this relationship that they have, and they actually do seem to have kind of like a genuine chemistry. And you do feel like you are actually getting an arc with the characters, which is, you know, sometimes you don't so much get with the kind of the B movies, but you do feel these characters throughout the film change and develop and kind of have a real arc within the film. And I actually quite liked it. And I like the idea here of this kind of almost an accidental hit sort of cyborg hero, because he's not going out there and kind of necessarily trying to. You know, he's quite willing to kind of give himself up initially, but you know, the kind of the company goes in the kind of all guns blazing and feels like he has to defend himself. So he's kind of pushed to having to do this, and I just quite like the idea here. And you know, it has obviously big in 1995 movie. Obviously, the technology at a certain period of time in that one, but you know, it's interesting watching it. You know, sort of nearly 25 years later and seeing kind of what technology. You know, things like, you know, the internet and email and how that's progressed and how it kind of plays into a film like this, basically. And I think it does it, you know, a reasonable job here outside of having cyborgs themselves. You know, I think it does a kind of a reasonable job here. The majority of the acting here I actually I quite liked. I really enjoyed, like I said, the relationship between Gruner and Ashbrook, and I think she does a great job here of the kind of the female, somewhat of a thankless damsel in distress role, but nonetheless it's quite fun. We also have some fun other characters here. Jeff Cobra is this kind of like this mercenary, and he's kind of got this kind of girlfriend as well that he's a little bit kind of rival, has a bit of a competitive streak with. And again, it's just like a nice little touch for, you know, just the bad guy kind of henchman kind of character, which I thought was quite good. It just gives them a little bit more of an interesting kind of backstory, so to speak. So I kind of quite like that. There are some kind of fun action sequences, lots of kind of like blowing up walls. Obviously Gruner, a proficient kind of martial artist, you know, I think that does a pretty good job here with the fight scenes. And there is quite an interesting twist at the end. I don't think it completely works because it doesn't kind of make sense when you think of the man hours that would have had to have gone in to make that in a kind of a real world scenario and how no one knows about it. But nonetheless, I actually thought it was quite a fun twist, and you know, it's actually a little bit more sophisticated than a lot of kind of B movies would give credit and that for. So I actually quite like the twist at the end here, and it kind of sets it up for an interesting would-be sequel that never actually happened. It would have been fun to kind of see where that goes. There's also some other kind of just nice little moments here and there where we have like the other automatic kind of like cyborgs who all look like Oliver Gruner, just slowly start to kind of like become a little bit more sentient and become a little bit more kind of sympathetic to our kind of our rogue cyborg. So what doesn't work for me? One big thing with this movie, unfortunately, really lets it down. The cinematography. The cinematography in this movie is awful. It is so underlit. I mean, we see this complaint often levied at the second Alien vs Predator movie, Alien vs Predator Requiem, but it's true with this one as well. We are meant to believe that they're in this high-rise, kind of like corporation headquarters, like some kind of massive building. But they don't seem to have lights in this building. You know, the building hasn't been destroyed, but they're constantly kind of skulking around in the kind of shadows with very little light. It's an absolute, you cannot see what is going on through nearly 50% of the shots in this movie. It's such a shame. Now, I suspect this was done to hide budgetary restraints, hide the kind of the sets and things like this, because it's quite often is a technique that is used to kind of like cover up the cheapness of certain films. However, it goes too far in this case, and you simply can't see what is going on. And when we kind of get to our sort of action sequences, and ultimately the kind of the chase movie with these kind of guys trying to escape a la Die Hard at the kind of this building, you know, it becomes lots of action sequences following one another in the dark. So it becomes a little bit repetitive in a way because it's not particularly visually interesting. Once we kind of hit our action stride, there's little kind of story development until we kind of get to kind of the end, where we have our kind of twist ending, so to speak. So visually, unfortunately, it really suffers because of this. There are some kind of dodgy performances from some smaller actors as well. There's one guy who plays like this banker who wants to kind of shut the corporation down, and he's so over the top in his performance, like, God, dear, you know, you can't have this company, and it's just really ridiculous in regards to some of the kind of the little bit OTT acting, and then there's just some weird decisions here, like we have these protesters outside, and they just want to burn the building down, and I think, come on, that doesn't seem quite likely that it's that extreme of a reaction, basically, to try and kind of you know, they want to preserve life and stuff, yet their first thing to do is to wanting to burn the building down. Seems a little extreme to me. But overall, it's a fun action science fiction movie with some great ideas here and a likeable kind of like lead with both male and female leads, and have an interesting kind of chemistry, and really kind of sets the potentially a continuation of this story. What I would have liked to have seen continue, but sadly we never did. But I actually enjoyed this movie. If you're a kind of a fan of the kind of the action films from the 90s, we had a whole bunch of kind of, you know, these type of movies come out in the kind of the 90s, you know, with the success of kind of the Terminator films and all of this. And this is one I feel that is, because it's not particularly flashy, it doesn't get talked about, but I think it's quite a fun film. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.